That morning, on our 35th wedding anniversary, I got an email. No words, just the subject line. Let's not make this ugly. Below it were the signed divorce papers and a cold message, the house has been sold. I turned on the security camera, and there he was, a man I'd never seen before, moving his things into my house, my wife's therapist. But before I go on, subscribe to the channel and tell me where you're listening from in the comments, because my story will make you rethink what trust really means. I stared at the computer screen. The cursor kept blinking under one line. The property transfer has been completed. Outside the window, snow was falling, covering the porch in a quiet, peaceful white. 35 years together, and our ending came neatly wrapped in one email. No tears, no words, no conversation, just cold digital signatures. I didn't jump up and scream like in the movies. I just made myself a cup of coffee, sat down, and read every line carefully. Marilyn had wired $700,000 from our savings into an account under a company called Blue Maple Investments. Never heard of it. I opened the security feed, our mountain house. 10 years of my life spent fixing every brick, every stair. And there he was, just like in my worst dream, a man walking in gloves on carrying boxes. In the corner of the kitchen, Marilyn stood watching with a faint smile. When the man turned his face toward the camera, I froze. Dr. Kent Lewis, my wife's therapist, the one she'd been seeing every week for the past 2 years. It felt like someone had pulled the ground right out from under me. Everything was so quiet, so clean, and that's what scared me most. A normal woman couldn't pull this off, selling a house, moving money, faking signatures, not alone. I called my son Ethan down in San Diego. "Do you know anything about your mom selling the house?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Selling the house? What are you talking about?" he said, surprised. "She just told me she wanted to retire somewhere in California." I heard the wind through the phone. Then his voice softened. "Dad, are you okay? Where are you right now?" "At home," I said, "just looking over some paperwork." I didn't say more. I didn't want to drag him into this. Not yet. I opened the safe where I kept the title deeds. Still there. But when I compared the signature on the email, something was off. It was my name, but stiff, mechanical, like someone had copied it using a digital tool. 35 years as an aerospace engineer. I know when something's fake. I can always tell when something has no soul. I looked up Blue Maple Investments. No website, no office, just an empty address, a ghost company. I felt like I was standing in the middle of a snowstorm. No direction left, but instead of breaking down, I opened my laptop, created a new folder, named it Project M. I didn't even know why. I just knew I had to start recording everything: dates, names, transactions, emails, footage. When you've been betrayed, the only thing you can hold on to is the truth. Around 9 that night, I heard a car pull into the driveway. Through the window, a silver SUV. Marilyn. She got out, not knowing I was still there. I turned off the lights, stood behind the curtain. She opened the door with a new key. Lights flicked on. She carried a box of wine and 2 glasses. Moments later, Kent walked in, hung his coat on the same hook where I used to hang my pilot jacket. I watched through the crack of the door, and it felt like my soul had stepped out of my body. They sat on the same sofa where Marilyn and I used to watch Jeopardy every night. Her voice was calm, almost weightless. "He won't do anything. He's gentle, weak, and old." Kent smiled, put a hand on her shoulder. "Trust me, you're safe. By next week, the money will all be in your account." I stepped away from the window, my hands pale from how tightly I was clenching them. I didn't feel pain anymore, only a coldness that crawled under my skin, the kind that comes before a fight. I grabbed my phone, opened contacts, found the name Harvey, an old colleague, former financial investigator in Denver. My message was short: "Need help." 3 minutes later, he replied, Still a man of few words, huh? Meet me tomorrow morning. Bring every document. I looked at the house one last time through the window. Under the warm yellow light, Marilyn turned on some music, and Kent wrapped his arms around her from behind. I closed the curtain, packed a few things, and left quietly. Outside, the snow was thick. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but one thing I knew for sure this time, I wouldn't let anyone else decide how my story ends. The next morning, I sat in a small cafe near the Denver train station waiting for Harvey. Snow was still falling, but somehow my mind felt sharper than ever. I hadn't slept all night, just watched every second of the security footage, writing down each time stamp, every frame. When Harvey walked in, he looked just the same, heavy coat eyes, sharp as a blade. "You look like hell, Ed," he said, pulling up a chair. "Now tell me, what the hell happened?" I opened my laptop and showed him everything: the bank transfers, the property deed, and the deep fake video of my so-called signature. He stared at the screen for a long while. "You're absolutely sure you didn't sign any of this?" "I swear," I said. "I don't even know what Blue Maple is." Harvey nodded slowly, pulled out a small notebook, same habit he had back when he was an investigator. "This smells bad. A forged signature is one thing, but a deepfake video, that's new. Someone with serious tech skills got involved. He made a few calls to people he still knew in the banking world. I just sat there gripping my coffee cup, feeling like I'd stumbled into a movie without knowing the script. Half an hour later, he turned back to me. "They confirmed it. Blue Maple opened an account 2 months ago. Director's name is Kent Lewis. Address listed in Miami. But it's a rented mailbox." I stared at him. "Kent Lewis, Marilyn's therapist." Harvey raised an eyebrow. "You're kidding." I wish I was. He pulled out a cigarette, rolled it between his fingers, but didn't light it. "All right. Here's what we do. Go home. Don't contact Marilyn. Don't send any emails. I'll trace the money." 3 days later, he called back, his voice low-clipped. "Urgent. Ed, I found something you need to see." We met in an old garage behind a repair shop. Harvey opened his laptop, showing me a string of transactions, small transfers from Blue Maple accounts scattered through several banks, all ending in one e-wallet in the Cayman Islands. And here, he said, opening another tab. A bank account. Name Marilyn Callahan. Amount $50,000. Transferred 1 week after the house was sold. I just sat there, frozen. No more doubts she wasn't just a victim. She was part of it. "She knew everything, Harvey," I whispered. Maybe he said. Or maybe she thought it was all legit, something Kent arranged. Either way, the law calls it fraud. I closed my eyes. My head was spinning. I didn't recognize the woman I once loved. Harvey put a hand on my shoulder. "Listen, Ed, I've got a contact at the FBI agent Ortiz. She handles cybercrime. If you're willing, I'll loop her in." I nodded. "As long as I get the truth back." 3 days later, I met Ortiz at a temporary FBI office in Denver. She was young, focused, sharp eyes, cold and precise like a scalpel. After I told her everything, she asked, "Do you have the deepfake video?" I opened my laptop, played the clip. She watched closely, then said, "The shadows don't match. The lighting's off. This is fake." We've seen similar cases in Florida, same pattern, same signature fraud. Blue Maple's probably just a front for a laundering network. "Money laundering," I repeated. "Yes," she said. "They target older people with property and little online activity. They build a digital clone, forge signatures, sell the assets, and if the spouse cooperates, it's even easier." That last line hit me hard. Ortiz looked straight at me. "Do you want to work with us, Mr. Callahan? If you agree, we can use you as bait to collect more evidence." I was quiet for a while, then asked, "Is it dangerous?" "Could be," she said, "but you'll be protected." I glanced out the window. Snow was still falling. Just like the morning I got that divorce email. I'd already lost everything. There was nothing left to fear. "I'll do it," I said. Ortiz smiled faintly, handed me a secured phone. "From now on, no direct contact with your wife. If she reaches out, act weak, tired. Let them believe you don't suspect a thing." That night, back in my temporary apartment, my phone buzzed. A message from Marilyn. I'm sorry for everything. I just want to see you one last time, to explain. I read it over and over, but didn't reply. Then a text from Harvey. Don't meet her. If she insists, let the FBI set it up first. I typed back, it's fine. I just want to grab a few old things. Then I'll go. Seconds later, Ortiz called. What are you doing, Ed? You told me to act weak, I said calmly. I'm just playing my part. She was silent for a moment. Then, all right. But remember, record everything. I looked at our old wedding photo on the table, the frame chipped paint peeling. 20 years ago, I believed we'd grow old together. Now, I was going to see her again, not for closure, but to find out just how far she'd gone. And somehow I knew that night would be the night everything came to light. The next morning, Ortiz called me at 6. Her voice was steady, cold. You still sure about this, Ed? We've planted the device. If she reaches out, just keep her talking for at least 5 minutes. I said, don't worry. I've landed planes in a blizzard. I know how to stay calm. Ortiz gave a small laugh. Good. Because this time, you're flying straight into the storm. 3 days later, Marilyn texted, her tone soft, full of that fake tenderness I used to fall for. Can we meet at the Summit, the restaurant on top of Aspen? I just want to end things peacefully. I knew the Summit. Elegant, quiet, overlooking the white valley below. Perfect for a private meeting, and just as perfect for the FBI to surround. Ortiz told me to bring nothing but the encrypted phone. Still, I slipped a small USB drive into my coat, a copy of every Blue Maple transaction. A part of me wanted to see her face when she realized I knew everything. That afternoon, I drove up the mountain pass, wind howling, snow swirling across the road. In the rearview mirror, a black SUV followed the FBI surveillance team. I wasn't afraid. Strangely, I felt calm. After months of being deceived, I was finally back in control. When I walked into the Summit, Marilyn was already there at the same window table where we'd celebrated her birthday last year. She still looked beautiful, but her eyes were different, cold, guarded. You came, she said softly. You look thinner. I gave a faint smile. I've had a lot to lose lately. She glanced around uneasy. Did you bring anyone? Why would I, Marilyn? We ordered coffee. I kept my breathing slow, eyes steady on hers. You don't understand, Ed, she began. Kent was only helping me with finances. I didn't know it would go this far. I tilted my head. $50,000 in your account, that's his idea of helping? Her face went pale. What are you talking about? I pulled a small envelope from my coat and set it on the table. Bank statements. Your name, transfer dates, confirmation stamps. If you plan to claim innocence, at least read carefully before you lie. Her hands trembled around the cup. You had someone follow me. I was just looking for the truth, I said quietly. The one thing you kept from me all this time. And then Kent walked in. Black coat, smug smile, the air of a man who thinks he's untouchable. Ed, he said, extending a hand. Didn't think you'd actually show. I didn't take it. You sold my house, used my name, emptied my retirement. I came to see if you still had the guts to look me in the eye. He hesitated, then gave a short laugh. You've got it all wrong. Everything was legal. You signed off on it. Remember, I met his eyes. The deepfake video, I've got a copy, and so does the FBI. Funny thing, the lighting doesn't match my office. Kent's smile faded. Marilyn turned to him, voice shaking. Kent, you said that video was real. Shut up, he hissed under his breath, jaw tight. I leaned back, arms crossed. You two make a great show, but this act, it's about to end. Right then, my phone buzzed. The signal was live. Ortiz and her team were listening. Kent kept talking unaware. You really think the FBI will believe some bitter old man? I've dealt with guys like you before. They'll just think you're senile. I raised an eyebrow. You sure like the sound of your own voice. The restaurant doors burst open. 4 agents stormed in. FBI, don't move. Kent spun around, face drained of color. Marilyn stumbled back, tears spilling down her cheeks. Ortiz stepped forward, motioned me aside, and said, her tone cold as steel, "Dr. Kent Lewis, you're under arrest for identity fraud, financial theft, and interstate money laundering." He glared at me. "You set me up?" I met his eyes calmly. "No, you set yourself up." Marilyn collapsed into her chair, pale as the snow outside. I turned away. I didn't want to see her like that. Ortiz came to my side. "You okay, Ed?" "I've made emergency landings at 30,000 feet, I said. This was smoother than most. As we walked out, I looked back through the glass, Marilyn covering her face in tears, Kent in cuffs being led away. I didn't feel proud or relieved, just empty. She had once been my whole world. Now she was just a name in a criminal file. On the drive back, Ortiz called. "Ed, this case is bigger than we thought. Over 20 victims across 3 states. We wouldn't have found Blue Maple without you." I looked out through the snowy windshield. "Don't thank me," I said. I just wanted back the only thing they couldn't steal, the truth. And as the black SUV rolled down from Aspen, I knew the fight was over, but the journey to forgive the past had only just begun. 3 weeks after the arrests in Aspen, I got my first call from Agent Ortiz. Her voice wasn't as cold as usual. It carried a hint of exhaustion and quiet relief. "We've got the confessions," she said. "Kent pled guilty. He's cooperating with the prosecutors. But there's something you should know. Ed, Marilyn's asking for leniency." I paused. "What did she say?" "She claims Kent manipulated her, threatened her, that she didn't know anything about the laundering scheme. Says she only signed the papers because she was afraid of being left alone." Ortiz hesitated, then added, "But we found their emails." She didn't just know. She helped him, even suggested how to hide the money trail. I sighed, staring out the window of my rented apartment. The storm had passed, leaving thin layers of ice glistening on the rooftops. "What are you going to do with her?" I asked. Ortiz said, "That's up to you. If you agree to drop the charges, she could get probation and return what she took. If not, she'll face full prosecution." I hung up, my heart heavy. Some decisions sound simple until they ask you to choose between justice and mercy. I didn't know what I wanted anymore, revenge or release. The next day, Ortiz sent me a copy of Marilyn's testimony. I spent the whole morning reading it. Through those cold typed lines, I could almost hear her voice pleading, justifying, blaming everything but herself. Ed was lonely. He stopped understanding me. Kent said he could help me start over. Then there was a line that stopped me cold. I don't know what changed in him. He used to be quiet, patient. I never thought he'd fight back. I closed the file and sat still for a long time. She was right about one thing I had changed. I wasn't the man who just endured anymore. I picked up the phone and called Ortiz. "I don't want her in prison," I said slowly, "as long as she gives back everything, signs her confession, and stays out of my life for good." Ortiz replied, "We'll draft the agreement." "Thank you, Ed. Not everyone can choose that path." 2 weeks later, I saw Marilyn for the last time at the federal court in Denver. She wore a gray sweater. Her face was pale, thinner. No trace of the expensive makeup she used to wear. She started to speak, but I raised a hand. "Don't," I said quietly. "We've said enough. I just want to sign and take back what's mine." Her eyes filled with tears. I never wanted it to end like this. I looked at her, calm but firm. "You made your choice, and choices have consequences." We signed the papers in silence. Before leaving, she turned and whispered, "I hope one day you can forgive me." I said, "I don't need forgiveness. I just need peace." When I finally got the keys back to the house in Boulder, I didn't feel happy. I stood in the empty living room where laughter once filled the air and let out a long breath. The walls were the same, but the memories weren't. I didn't move back in. Just took a few things: the model airplane trophy, a photo of me and the kids in the garden, and my father's old pocket knife. Everything else I left behind, like closing a chapter that had already ended. That night I met Harvey. He poured me a glass of whiskey, the amber light flickering across the wooden table. "You did the right thing, Ed," he said. "You don't need revenge. You just need to move on." I took a sip. It burned down my throat. "I just want to forget." "No one ever forgets," Harvey said softly, "but you can learn to live without letting it eat you alive." I smiled faintly, though the weight inside me hadn't lifted. On the drive home, I stopped by the bridge. The river below shimmered under the moonlight cold still. I took off my wedding ring and threw it in. The small gold band flashed once, then disappeared into the dark. "Goodbye, Marilyn," I whispered. The next morning, Ortiz called again. "It's over," she said. "Kent got 15 years. Marilyn's on probation in order to return all the money. Do you want to attend the sentencing?" I said no. "I've seen enough." I set the phone down and looked out at the pale blue spring sky. For the first time in months, I felt empty, but not in pain. Maybe that's what peace really is, when the hurt doesn't vanish, but it no longer owns you. I started packing that afternoon, ready to leave the city. Didn't know where I was going. Only that I wanted to start somewhere new, where no one knew my name. Maybe that's the gentlest punishment for those who survive not hatred, but learning how to live again, alone. I left Boulder at the start of summer, when the last patches of ice melted, and the streams began whispering under the mountains. No farewell party, no promises. I just drove northwest. A few boxes in the back seat, my father's pocket knife, and a photo of my 2 kids laughing in the garden. My only goal was simple: to find a quiet place, where no memory could follow me. 3 weeks later, I stopped in a small coastal town called Port Haven, Oregon. The ocean there wasn't the postcard kind, not blue but gray. Cold, with heavy salt in the air and a wind that never stopped blowing. I rented a small wooden cabin near the pine forest about 200 meters from the shore. It was old, tilted, creaking in the wind, but so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat at night. On my first morning in Port Haven, I walked along the beach, watched seagulls glide low and white waves stretch endlessly to the horizon. Something in the wind made me feel lighter. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. It was all behind me: the case, the trial, the past. Now it was just me, and the space between 2 breaths. I started fixing up the cabin, replaced the roof, painted the walls, added a small window facing the sea. Working with my hands kept me calm. When my hands were busy, my mind stopped replaying the old memories. Every night I cooked a simple meal, turned on the radio for the news, and wrote in a small notebook, a habit from my engineering days. But now, instead of numbers and sketches, I wrote simple things. Waves were strong today. Sunset behind the rocks. No calls. One morning, I was asked to teach a model airplane workshop for kids at the community center. At first I said no, but my neighbor, a retired Navy pilot, insisted. "The kids need someone like you," he said. "They love stories about the sky." So I said yes. And strangely, standing among those kids, watching them glue wings and cheer as their little planes lifted off, I felt something stir inside me again. Maybe for the first time since it all ended, I felt alive. Every week I sent updates to Ortiz. She told me the Blue Maple case had grown into a full federal investigation. My testimony helped close 27 related scams. I just did what I had to do, I told her. She laughed softly. Maybe. But thanks to you, a lot of people got their lives back. One August evening, I received a letter from Washington sealed with the FBI insignia. Inside was an official note of thanks and a handwritten letter. "Mr. Callahan, because of your evidence, we've helped many families keep their homes and savings. Thank you for not giving up. Signed, Ortiz." I placed the letter on the table and stared at it for a long time, not out of pride, but because I realized sometimes from the ruins of our own loss, we can still build something good for others. That night, I opened a drawer and took out an old photo of Maryland Grand Canyon, 1995. She was standing in the wind hair, flying, smiling so bright it made me forget how tired I was back then. I put the photo in a small tin box and carried it outside. The night air was heavy with salt. the sea dark and endless. I struck a match. The tiny flame flickered, then I set the photo inside. The paper curled and turned to ash in my palm. "Goodbye, Marilyn," I whispered. "Thank you for the final lesson." The next morning I went to the beach with the kids from class. One boy looked up and asked teacher, "How far can your plane fly?" I smiled, handing him a wooden model. "As far as the wind keeps its promise." He threw it into the air, the propeller spun fast, the little plane glided out toward the sea, then dipped into the waves sparkling in the sunlight. I watched it disappear, feeling as light as the breeze itself. My life, I thought, was a lot like that small plane once thrown off course, beaten by the wind, but it still managed to fly far enough to find the light again. That evening I sat on the porch, listening to the ocean's rhythm, steady as a heartbeat. I opened my notebook and wrote the last line. It's time to stop looking back. Peace isn't forgetting. It's learning to live with what remains. I closed the book and smiled. The wind carried the scent of salt and the faint cries of distant gulls. For the first time in 35 years, I felt truly free, no one left to lose, nothing left to reclaim. Just an old man and the whole sky ahead of him. I looked out at the sea wind, brushing through my gray hair, carrying that briny taste of life. And finally, I understood peace doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from learning how to live again. If you've ever been betrayed or lost your faith, subscribe to the channel. I'll tell you stories that might just help you find your strength again. So tell me, have you ever had to start over after being broken?